Hi everybody, this is Wes. Welcome to the show. I'm doing another painting with the reference photo on the left and the painting on the right, obviously. This is a commissioned painting I did just recently. I'm starting off, obviously, with the canvas had some paint on it already, a nice tone, nice warm tones. And just starting off with a China marker drawing. It's not going to be exact, and actually I can already see the nose is odd on it, but it kind of all gets corrected in the painting itself as I go, as much as needs to be corrected. Yeah, the snout on the dog is a little short compared to the bottom part of the mouth. So the first step is just to block in the major areas of color. I'm starting with the white here, the white fur. Even in shadow or highlighted areas, I'm just kind of mainly concerned with just getting the basic color down. Details later. Not sure why I went with blue for the fur, other than I usually mix blue with brown to get a nice black, but this works. It just separates the dark areas from the light. Nothing wrong with using the blue here in this stage. And then for the horizon, I wanted it above the eye line so it doesn't get kind of muddled up with the eye. It's kind of confusing there, so I wanted that nice light background of the water behind the eye. It's just a little choice I made. Still in the first stage of this painting, blocking in the color. Notice that throughout these early stages I keep that same 2-inch brush, the larger brush. This keeps the temptation of going into detail too early off the table for me, and makes me focus on the overall shapes in the image. Since the water had a lot of those horizontal marks of highlight and shadow, I decided to indicate that a bit, kind of to remind me later to keep that in. Finally, now coming back with a little closer to the shadow color of the white fur with that gray. I'm going to skip just a few minutes here in the painting video to after kind of correcting with a white China marker. Should be right about here. So I've seen a few places where the fur wasn't high enough on the back of the head, and the collar needs to rise up, and these little things. Kind of my whole process of painting involves iterations of progress from very primitive basic shapes to slowly with each stage more complex, more detailed forms. Kind of feel like a broken record sometimes going back over and over that, but that's kind of the main way I see my painting process working, is placing something down, letting it dry, and then fixing it the next time around, letting that part dry, fixing my fix in the next stage, and so on, as long as it takes. And I'm never really striving for a perfect copy of the photograph. I'm always trying to add a bit more energy, a bit more vitality to the image, because it's not a photograph, it's a painting. So it's not really meant to be documentation, it's meant to be art. It has to be something added by the artist. Looking at the painting now, I can see, as well as you probably can, the whole mouth and snout is pretty well off from the photo. Sometimes as you're painting, especially staying up near the painting, the closer you are, the less you can see the whole image, the whole painting as it sits. Sometimes you won't see big changes made until after it switches to the next stage, after the painting's dried, because I've had a chance to step back and assess what I did in the previous session. So that's often when you'll see the big changes. The neon colors of that neon yellow and orange, I don't quite have those particular combinations of paints on my palette, so I can't quite hit those exactly. I'm just kind of estimating with just a bright yellow green, and the red that I have with a bit of yellow added. I have a pretty limited palette, and I generally don't change it much. I think the yellow that I use is a cadmium yellow medium, maybe, or light, one or the other. Here I'm correcting again with the white china marker. Trying to kind of figure out what's wrong with it. I can tell things are wrong, and I need to find some way to indicate that. The quickest way and the most control that I find is to use china markers. They're a little better than just pencils or graphite or charcoal, because they don't smear when water or paint is added, and they can be covered over easily enough. So there, I've started fixing the top of the snout, got it raised up more like in the photograph, so I'm a little more happy with that. Haven't fixed the nose yet, just because I still have white on the brush, and I always try to use up whatever paint I have on the brush before switching to another color. Another part of the painting that isn't, correct as compared to the photograph is the is kind of that neon green, neon yellow vest itself, and the legs beneath it. There's more distance between the legs and the face in the photograph than there is in the painting. But I wanted the legs in the painting, and I wanted the head to be as prominent as it could be, because that's the important part. So I'm just kind of going with a slightly different pose. You can think of it that way, with the legs are higher up, resting on the seat before it. That's kind of how I justify it to myself. It's not exactly like the photograph, but it's close enough. Of course, with a commission, I always try to get especially the face, the facial expression, and the head as close as I can. There's always a lot more leeway than I perceive, I think. When you're looking at an artist's rendition of a person or a pet, I think everybody's brain kind of easily makes that leap to say, well, no, it's not a photograph. It's not exactly like, my loved one, but it's the artistic version of it. It's the representation of the thing itself. But of course, me as an artist, I'm trying to capture it as closely as I can, and so those little parts that aren't right really kind of drive me forward to correct each stage to get it closer. But at some point you have to tell yourself, okay, this is enough, this is close enough. And that's not always easy to do. For instance, looking at it as it sits now, the face of the dog is much bulkier and larger in its proportions than the photograph. But it's getting there, it's getting close. I don't know if I totally correct the bulkiness in the finished painting, but it gets closer, obviously, than this. So I tend to usually send multiple photographs of the painting process when I'm doing commissions. The first is usually once it becomes a recognizable painting as a dog, and then when it becomes recognizable as that particular dog. If that makes sense. And that happens, before it gets to the finished stage with all the detail and everything. But here it's still slightly bulky to me, but it's close enough to the same dog. Although now I'm seeing the kind of that black part of the forehead where it just above the eyes, where it's supposed to be going over. There's no arc to it. There's no arch to it. Hopefully I fix that. If not, I'll go back and change it in the finished painting. A painting is never done, it's just kind of abandoned at the end. Adding that little tooth there in the mouth really helped, I think, as did kind of adding a little more red to the tongue. Helps sell that aspect of it. Debulkifying that top snout, that's good. That makes it much closer. Just that little change seems like it's enough to make it a more recognizable dog. I might have to go back and fix the top of the head though. Boy, when I see my, paintings that I've done, all I can see is the things that are wrong with them, which is hard for other people to understand, I guess. It's just part of that artist mindset. And with that, that's just about all I've got for this one. This one's just about done. I appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. Click like at the bottom to help my channel grow, and leave a comment if you have one. Thanks for watching.